All of a sudden there's new kids on the block besides agriculture. We have oil and gas, forestry, transportation, urbanization, globalization, all taking a toll on the land, these what we call cumulative effects. So things were moving along very well. Economic-wise, development was the key. The major drought of the 80s, I think, brought things back into perspective a bit, drew attention to the land use practices and the need to conserve soil, water, biodiversity for future generations. In Alberta, some community-based groups kind of sprung up at this time. Initially, they were mostly focused on an industrial development, friends of, and so on. But they did recognize what was happening out there with development. Cows and Fish was a good example of a major program that helped create that awareness through their riparian health assessments, providing tools and capacity, of course, for landowners to change what they were doing. Later, Water for Life strategy would also encourage groups to start up and get working on the land. So despite all this development, we did end up with an economic debt. And this was, I guess I have a hard time understanding this, because development is for economics. So all of a sudden in the early 90s, most of the governments across Canada focused on reducing that economic debt. We heard this from Preston this morning. So, of course, everyone had to contribute, and the social, cultural programs were hit, and probably the environmental work took the biggest hit. And I think this is fairly significant, as we'll see in a couple more slides. So what we ended up, of course, reducing the economic debt, but at the same time growing an ecological debt. So that that's what we did. We exchanged our economic debt for an ecological debt, and all these issues that pop up that we talked about so far today in reducing our natural capital, of course, came to light. Of course, the stewardship ethic, I think, emerged when it was most needed. Civil society stepped up to address environmental issues because of the cutbacks in the 90s, and of course government and industry followed. CRA gives some statistics on the number of groups that started up during the 90s, and this is just an example. Just the charities, for example, increased by 25%. At the first stewardship conference in Guelph in 2000, I think everybody was really surprised at the number of groups that were out there working on the landscape and doing what they called random acts of stewardship. And I think the future conferences then focused on trying to organize that a bit more and increase the efficiency of the work of those groups. In Alberta in 2005, we did put together a directory of watershed stewardship groups, and we found over 120 or so working in the province, and now that number continues to grow, probably up to well over 150. So I guess I see stewardship as being alive and well in Canada. Is it a buzzword? Yes, maybe to some. I think some are taking advantage of that. Is it part of the solution in terms of conserving our natural capital? I think that's what the big focus is. And I believe it is, and I believe it's a very large part. One of the tasks that somebody will do beyond this conference is try to define stewardship. And is stewardship picking up litter and placing it in a bin? Changing a system of cultivation? Creating new legislation to better manage land use? I don't know. Replacing concrete driveway with permeable blocks that allow infiltration? Turning off water when you're brushing your teeth? Is this stewardship? Or is it just wildlife habitat and biodiversity conservation? I think whoever's charged with defining stewardship is going to have to look at all these questions and then come up ultimately with the answer. But I think it's all about capital. Personally, I think investing in stewardship is basically building capacity in our social capital. And Vic Adamowicz kind of talked about this as well, to restore and sustain our natural capital to ensure a sustainable economic capital. Thanks very much.
We have time for one question. Is there a burning question anybody has from the floor or from the webcast? Anything?